There we go. So welcome everyone. Welcome to this CrowdSec webinar where today I'm going to be walking you through exactly what crowdsourced threat intelligence is. So just before we start, I'm Jack. I'm the community manager here at CrowdSec and I'll be running you through the webinar today. Just a few basic housekeeping rules as normal. So if you have any questions as I'm going through the content and any question at all, no question is a stupid question. Please leave them in the YouTube chat and we'll answer them there in the chat as we go through the content. And secondly, if you're wondering whether this will be available after the session, yes, it is being recorded and you'll be able to watch the recording using the same link that you are watching this stream from now. So as I've said, today is all around crowdsourced threat intelligence. So what you can expect from this session is, to start with, I'm just going to talk about some of the traditional approaches to cybersecurity and how that might differ from the crowdsourced approach. I'll then kind of introduce CrowdSec and how we fit in to the world of crowdsourced threat intelligence. We'll then look at some of the benefits and how this really enables security teams to be way more proactive compared to traditional approaches. And then I'll end by sharing a few resources with you and how you can get started. So let's start off by highlighting really the traditional approach to cybersecurity and some of its flaws. So traditionally, cybersecurity, as we see it here at CrowdSec, traditionally it's been highly perimeter focused, basically focused on building walls around an organization's assets and systems, much like a castle, and how you've got your perimeter defense around your castle and your castle only. So this approach really made way for a very siloed structure of security teams. So traditionally, cybersecurity teams or organizations' cybersecurity strategy has involved separate teams or departments responsible for various different aspects of their security strategy. So you may have a network security team, an endpoint security team, and an incident response team. But really, this structure can, as we viewed it, and has created information and resource gaps between teams, which prevents this intelligence sharing not only internally, but also by partnering with other organizations, which has been quite limited. So as well as having a very siloed structure, this traditional approach has also taken a really reactive approach at responding to cyber threats. So traditionally, security teams would react to incidents and breaches once they've occurred, rather than trying to take proactive measures to actually try and prevent them. And then finally, this approach often takes what we at CrowdSec sometimes refer to as the super soldier approach. So think kind of like Captain America, where really large enterprises and organizations dedicate huge budgets to their security teams, but somehow still find themselves getting compromised or breached fairly frequently. So this super soldier approach is what really motivated our CrowdSec founders to create CrowdSec and set up this project. So their logic was fairly simple. If these large enterprises are spending millions of dollars on their security teams and strategy every year, yet they still find themselves breached, isn't it time to try and think of a different approach or take a different approach? So they really thought, if the number of attackers outnumber security teams across the world by hundreds to one, should we start thinking about a new approach where we kind of team up together to try and outnumber cyber criminals and malicious actors? So that idea really formed the basis for CrowdSec, and it's one that's in line with sort of this modern view and collaborative approach to cybersecurity. So with that in mind, what exactly is the crowdsourced approach? So crowdsourced threat intelligence is a strategy to really harness the collective power of a community where we all work together to identify and respond to security threats. So the crowdsourced approach involves the aggregation of insights and data from a really diverse network of contributors that enhances everyone's threat detection and mitigation, which, as I've said, really allows security teams to take a much more proactive approach to security rather than the reactive approach that we've seen traditionally. So how CrowdSec comes into play is that we have a really fast growing network of users that contribute to this crowdsourced threat intelligence approach. So our network currently consists of over 70,000 active users around the globe. So these users are in more than 190 countries, which we think is really impressive. And on average, they're sending us around 12 million threat signals per day, all based around malicious IP addresses. So how our users actually help us source and collect this information? On the right hand side here, you can see a simple kind of workflow diagram, which I will walk you through. So our users will install our open source software component, which is known as the CrowdSec Security Engine. So this would be installed onto your websites or your web servers, networks, containers like Docker or Kubernetes, really any internet-based system that your organization relies on or wants to protect. So you will install our security engine onto whatever system you're protecting, and our security engine will then get to work acquiring and parsing, basically analyzing the logs of that system. So as it's running through the logs, it will pick up various different events, and it will then try and pair those with some behavior patterns that we have already defined. So those behavior patterns are attack patterns, really. And if our security engine finds a match with behaviors in your logs with these predefined behavior patterns, then it will generate an alert and it will remediate that attack locally on your system. So the collaborative part of all of this comes in because our security engine is really the foundation of us building a global cyber threat intelligence network that has been crowdsourced by the community. So once an attack has been detected and remediated locally on your system with the security engine, our users can also choose to opt in to share this information with the CrowdSec network. So in return, if a user does opt in, they will then receive all of our crowdsourced intelligence via APIs straight to their security engine, which allows them to be much more proactive. So if an attacker has attacked a subset of our community, if this has been reported and shared, everyone in our community receives that intelligence, and their security engine and remediation component will automatically block those malicious IP addresses before they even have a chance to try and attack them. So that sharing is really what forms our tactical threat intelligence blocklists, which I will talk a bit about in a moment, as well as our overall cyber threat intelligence database, which is there for you to query, which again, I'll introduce you to a bit later. So we are aware that historically there have been some concerns around crowdsourced threat intelligence, particularly how companies like CrowdSec can ensure that this intelligence is accurate and also free from false positives. So here at CrowdSec, we are obviously actively addressing these challenges, which mainly focus on accurate data and data poisoning. So the major challenge, obviously, for us includes confirming that, yes, this IP address is malicious. But as I've said, we also need to focus on making sure no bad actor can infiltrate our network and try and poison our data. So as you can see, and as I've mentioned, these 12 million threat signals will move through two different filters before they make it into our tactical threat intelligence block list. So the first filter that these signals need to make their way through is our consensus chamber or our consensus calculator. So this filter is really there to try and filter out attackers, specifically trying to filter out isolated attacks that may have only targeted one or two machines before they then disappear. So in order for these threat signals about attacks to make their way through this first filter, the signals need to meet a couple of conditions. So the first one is that the signal needs to have been reported by a minimum of 5 users, and these users all need to reach a certain trust score, which allows this intelligence to work their way through the consensus chamber. So this is so that we can optimize the community block list and really try and avoid distributing are relevant indicators of compromise. So if only one user has reported that this IP address is malicious, it won't make it past that first filter. And the reason for that is so that we can ensure that our block lists are populated with really relevant and significant threat intelligence for the community. So you can see here that about 500,000 of these signals make their way through the first filter. And then for them to actually make their way into our block list, they are then fed to the next filter, which is our expert system. So the expert system within CrowdSec is really a dedicated rule engine that's designed for much more in-depth and comprehensive evaluation of these attack signals. So it employs various different rules that each address a different factor that determine whether this threat signal should make its way into the block list. So within this filter, we have a range of machine learning algorithms, as well as our own network of hosted honeypots, which really help us verify the authenticity of attack signals in question. So once this signal matches or satisfies all of those conditions, they will then be added to our tactical threat intelligence block lists. But for any threat signals that don't make their way past the expert stage, they will still be included in our cyber threat intelligence database, which you can query. And again, I'll tell you how to do that a bit later. So that was really quite a high level overview of one, how CrowdSec collects this intelligence, and two, how we ensure that it's free from false positives and highly accurate. But if you want to go into a bit more detail, specifically around the consensus chamber and the various different factors and variables that make up our consensus, we do have a learning academy, which is completely free, and you can earn some certifications on there if you complete the courses. So these are two that I've picked out that will go into much more detail about exactly what our consensus chamber is. And also the CrowdSec fundamentals course will show you how you can install your own security engine and start to benefit from our crowdsourced approach. So speaking of benefits, some of the benefits of our crowdsourced approach. So CrowdSec's approach to threat intelligence. One of the main and key benefits is the diversity of our data and the diversity of the intelligence that is collected. So while there are a host of different block lists and CTI databases available out there in the market, those are typically built on honeypots or data that's been scraped from not so reliable third-party sources. Whereas our data, as I mentioned, comes from real users, protecting real servers in real production environments across a massive range of industries and infrastructure. So the diversity that we have really enhances the effectiveness of a proactive defense, and it really mitigates the risks of using third-party data that may be poisoned by malicious actors and so on. So our data is across a broad spectrum, using real-life users and scenarios. So as well as that, by enabling security teams to be really proactive and preemptively block this list of known malicious IP addresses, our approach can also mitigate the risk of things like service downtime and potential data losses that might come from any breach. So beyond the obvious and immediate technical implications of that, this proactive defense strategy also can help to safeguard your organization against significant revenue loss that might come as a result of a breach or fines. And arguably, most importantly, also really helps cement that customer trust, for the customer to really trust that their data is safe in your system. And then the collaborative nature of crowdsourced threat intelligence also really helps to establish a foundation for a real-time threat response. So being proactive really enables organizations to stay ahead of emerging security challenges and minimize the potential impacts of these threats or breaches. So by fostering this environment of swift detection and immediate action, our crowdsourced approach really ensures that your organization can effectively neutralize threats as soon as they arise, allowing you to maintain the integrity of your systems in what is unfortunately just an ever-changing threat landscape. So to give you an example, if a new vulnerability is exploited or a new attack comes out, as long as our network has seen that and enough trusted members have reported it, your system, without you even needing to do anything, will preemptively block this new threat. So incredibly proactive, which brings a host of benefits. So we're coming into the last section of the webinar now. So as a reminder, if you have any questions and you haven't asked them yet, please leave them in the chat, and myself or one of the team will answer them in the chat as we run through. But to wrap up this session, I'll now walk you through some of the different ways that you can start really using and taking advantage of our cyber threat intelligence network. So your first option is to really go all in and install and deploy your own security engine. So as I've mentioned, this will not only identify and block attacks in real time, all automated, you will also receive the CrowdSec intelligence via an API to your system. So not only are you blocking attacks in real time, you're also simultaneously receiving all of the intelligence and proactively blocking known malicious IP addresses. So to get started and to install a security engine, you will need to head to app.crowdsec.net, which will take you to the CrowdSec console, where you can sign up to our free community plan, and we'll walk you through exactly how to deploy your first security engine. If you don't want to install a security engine, but you still want to benefit from proactive defense measures based on our crowdsourced intelligence, you can actually plug our Blocklists directly into your firewall or your CDN. So what I will do at the last slide, I will quickly share a link for you to go to our Blocklist product page to see how you can do that. But this is all API based, so your firewall will receive the intelligence and can then act on those malicious IP addresses. And then finally, you can also consume our cyber threat intelligence by querying different IP addresses thanks to our IP lookup bar. So this is really helpful for cases where you might want a bit more context about IP addresses that have been targeting you, or you can start to apply a bit of forensic and see a bit more information about IP addresses that have historically targeted you. So again, for this one, you will head to app.crowdsec.net/CTI, and that will take you to our IP lookup bar, which will then query against our entire set of cyber threat intelligence. So that brings us to the end of this session. I really hope you've enjoyed the content. As I've said, any questions, get them in the chat now and we'll answer them in the YouTube chat. Or if you have any longer questions, feel free to join us on Discord. So Discord is what we use to interact with our community and for them to ask any questions and get help from the CrowdSec team. So this QR code will take you to our Discord server. And as I've said, you can open a support thread or just get to know a bit more about CrowdSec and our users. I also promised you that I would share the link to see our Blocklist product page. So the link that you see on the top left now will take you to our Blocklist page and how you can get started. If you missed the link for getting started with the CrowdSec console and installing a security engine, that is the link you can see on screen now. And then finally, as I mentioned, we do have a CrowdSec Academy, which is completely free, and you can earn some certifications on there. So we have about 6 courses now, ranging from beginner topics like how to install CrowdSec to some more advanced ones like how to protect your e-commerce store. So that is the link that you can see on screen now. I would really urge you to join our Discord server just so you can keep in touch with us, hear about our latest product updates and our next event as well. So with that, thank you all very much for joining. Again, the recording will be available using the same link you're watching from now, and really hope to see you in the Discord server or watching another webinar in the near future.